just gotta make sure. That's how I know my people. So my question for you is, what living single cast member character would be carrying your book?
Ooh. Regine.
Ooh, okay.
Because she's like, she's the epitome of like, I feel like she knew who she was. It took her a little while to get there, but then she's like in your face, like, I'm here.
Yeah.
Like that.
Very much. Okay.
Yeah,
that was
I've
easy.
arrived.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I love that show.
Me too. As someone who is now like, I'm sure you've gotten like, you're a public figure. You need to do this.
Man.
So can you speak to how are you handling it?
That's a good question. I will honestly say that as far as it comes to social media, being a public figure now, I have backed away a lot of from my personal opinions, because I could just put something that's funny or whatever before now, but now it's almost like as soon as that book came out, I was like, I just have to be really mindful with how I navigate, and sometimes that makes me feel confined to a certain degree, because it's like, yeah, I want to be writing this book and or doing this podcast and or doing these things over here, but I also want to have the freedom to be who I really am. So until I like figure out what that looks like for me, I'm just being a little bit more reserved. Yeah.
Also, what would you tell like another creative coming up, trying to do some of the same things or trying to do their own thing? Like, what advice would you give them around that?
Even though, just like I said, you may not want the attention in that way, you're gonna get it, and people are gonna judge you, and that's okay. But just make sure that the voice that you want to project is really what you want people to know about you. Like, I always have this thing that comes with specifically Facebook. Like, if you don't want to see it on the front news of a newspaper or the front page of a newspaper, don't put it out, because screenshot ministry is real. Nothing is private. And that's not to say that you can't have a personal opinion, but you just really have to recognize the repercussions of that. I am a business owner first, so I always have to think about that. I don't want to be offensive to anyone that's going to affect my business. And then, you know, you want people to take you serious, because unfortunately, people are going to look at that and they're going to judge you and to see if they want to take you seriously. And if you want to be taken seriously in any facet, you have to just think about that. So if that's not something that you want to do, then you just need to not do it. You just need to not be that public figure per se. So I've had people that have come to me with certain ideas for a paint event or something, and if it's not in alignment with who I am, then I'm like, no. I always used to have this thing when I would sing. I never sang a song that I did not believe in, unless, like when I was younger, okay, I was in choir and I might have had to sing some French song or something I didn't really know about or whatever. But, and that's even irrespective of money, you know what I'm saying? Like, because money ain't everything, and those things carry, they follow you. When you are multiple things, a multi-hyphenate, and you have multiple great things going on for you, you have to be mindful of the way that you present yourself to the public. You most definitely are entitled to have a private life, but you just have to navigate things a little different than an average person that doesn't have a business or does.
Oceans and Heavens. So what inspired you to write the story?
So Oceans and Heavens is a personal memoir about life, love, heartbreak, joy, grief, motherhood, friendship, my whole entire life encompassed in one book. I wanted to make sure that I talked about several different topics and how they intertwine with one another, because sometimes, you know, you can read a book and it's only about relationships, and although your romantic relationships may be the most important, I guess with air quotes, but we often like leave out how they are affected by our friendships or vice versa. And so, like, you know, over the last 20 years of my adult life, they've all intertwined, and so I just wanted to make sure that I talked about that as a whole. So things happened personally in my life that it felt like the last chapter was written last year, and so
wow,
I took that and ran with it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Feel like they need to do that, and then we get into these deeper conversations. So really, it's just to invoke healing, and to not only just be like a book where it just kind of tells about my life, but more or less like how you can possibly use some of the tools that I had to recognize that you're even in a situation that could be toxic or that could be not for your best. So
I love that. What has been the most impactful part of this experience for you?
Man, hearing women say, I was afraid that I was the only one that had gone through that. Because we often think that, because it feels like it, that we're walking through these things ourselves, but it's been very helpful for people, particularly the ones that I know for sure that have come to me and they even feel comfortable enough to share. Now that they know that I, was, transparent in that way, then they're like, oh my God, that happened to me. And blah, 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 you helped me so much, that type of thing. So I always say, even if there are women that read it and shut the book, cry some good tears, and they never tell me how it impacts them, I know that it touched someone. And if they're able to get up and say, you know what, I never really thought about that being hurtful to me or how it impacted me, and then they decide to leave something that's no longer serving them, then that's enough. And so the next 3 books are a series called Release, and the first one is called Before I Let Go, and that's going to be released on November the 1st. So I'm looking forward to that. It is a little bit scary, but not as much as the last book release.
Got you.
But you are so ambivalent because it's not good for you. It's like logically but that heart, that is real. And when you really feel someone or something and you just are like, I gotta let this go, but this is gonna hurt so bad, it's almost like you're bracing yourself.
How are you pouring into your self-care to make sure that you have a full cup when you are out in the world, giving of yourself? What are some things that you've been able to do, or things that you hope to continue to do or are practicing? Especially going into the winter months and these transitional periods. But what are you doing to sustain Nikita?
Good question. I do a lot of alone time where I call myself I'm an adopted introvert. I was never that way when I was younger, but life happened, and then it just caused me to be a little bit more cautious of people. I even talked about that in my book. It wasn't so much that I was afraid to be around people or anything, 'cause that's not it, but it's more like I'm a little bit more mindful, I don't know about that person, I don't know about that. So I just kind of have, because of those habits, I just take a lot of time where I just spend time with myself. And even if that's Netflix and chilling, or just drinking me a glass of wine at my home, or even going to my studio and just painting just for me, then I do that. I am very selective with my energy, for sure, because it's a bougie energy and it's on a budget.
That's real.
It's on a tight budget. And so I'm mindful of the people I spend time with, and that's just not only physically, but on the phone or in my presence. I am a mother, so I always have to devote time to them and have the mental capacity and space to have to do that. And then I make time to spend with my friends too, or the people that I care about the most. I'm needing to get better with reading, so I bought a book today from Miss Corey that I am going to read, by Bell Hooks, All About Love. I heard it's a staple classic, and I have not read it yet. So I keep saying that to people, man, I don't make time to read, but it's I just really need to do it. And I think that that helps with writing, because it makes your mind go to places where you're like, oh, I never really thought about that. How would I interpret it?
What would you ask that the readers take away from this book? Or your either of the newly released books?
Yeah. So I have to say, the poetry book, honestly, was one that came, when I tell you, I literally wrote that book, I don't want to exaggerate, but seriously, 2 weeks, because I didn't realize the suppressed feelings that I had with the stories that I had buried until I was writing them out. And so initially I set out to look through my journals and maybe some of my blogs, man, I've been writing for so long, I could just pull this from here, but especially the blogging, because I had been selectively transparent, I could have done that, but it just still didn't give any more than was already there. But as far as the poetry book, I always give a preface or a disclaimer, really, is this is a little more raw, And so I remember when my 91-year-old great aunt came to my first book signing, and she's like, so what's the difference between these books? And then I said, well, Auntie, you might want to read the memoir, but this poetry book is a little bit more raw. It's a little more, it might not be for you, church mother. She said, girl, I'm raw. She's like,
yes, she is.
And yes, she is spicy. But I feel like I'm learning to come into my own to where I don't have to, I don't want to have to give a disclaimer about who I am as a 40-year-old woman. Like, I don't want to be like, okay, now, y'all can't read this because it's got some cussing in it. It might feel some kind of way. But I'm just like, that's who the hell I am. Like, that's who I am. That's who I embody. So again, with that being said, the poetry book came from me like digging through these stories. Like, I'm still mad about that shit. Like, I still feel some kind of way. And so instead of me putting it into the book to where it seems like almost a bitter insert into the story, we're going to put this over here so that, you know, if you want to read along and, you know, kind of bounce between the two, you can, or you could finish either one first and just be like, okay, now I get the whole picture type of thing.
Got you. That makes total sense.
So I just transitioned to full-time entrepreneurship. I actually own an art studio in downtown Grandview called Calm and Canvas, where I specialize in paint and sip parties and events. So you guys can find me there at 820 Main Street in Grandview, down the street from City Hall, or on calmandcanvas.com. Same hashtag, or not hashtag, but same handle on all social media. Let's see. I also am a singer. I haven't done much with that more recently, but one day, someday, I will have an album soon. And
yes,
then, thank you. And then more writing to come, of course, the release series starting in November. And then I have a podcast called The Art That Heals Us, which talks to creatives that have overcome adversity by using their gifts. And so you can find that The Art That Heals Us on Instagram. And now I just made a Facebook page today for that. And then you can find them on my Apple Podcasts and Spotify. So that's what I'm doing. Oh, and my actual website is nikitavonee.com, where all of those things are.
Yes.